Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another video for EVE Echoes. In today's video we're going to be talking about the upcoming balance patch just a little bit more. I know it's becoming a little bit of a dragged out subject at this point in time, but it is the next big thing to happen to EVE Echoes and we still have a lot we need to discuss about it. So in today's video I thought what we'd do is jump back and have a look at the patch notes as they were before the test server opened up. And rather than reading these as a kind of forward look at what's coming, we're going to look at these as a how did this actually pan out on the test server? Does this work? Does this need changing? And we're going to basically give feedback looking at the test server, looking at those patch notes, and see if we can find a way to move forward with this one together. If you enjoyed the video, let me know by hitting like on it, subscribe to the channel for all things EVE Echoes, ding the notification bell for more updates, and of course, most importantly, if you agree with what I'm saying, please do get onto the EVE Echoes Discord, head into the suggestions channel there, and talk to the developers, let them know your thoughts and opinions on this balance patch. Finally, if you do want to go the extra mile to help support this channel, you can do so either by finding us on Patreon or our Redbubble merchandise store, which I will link in the description below. As said and done then, let's have a look at those patch notes and see how it all actually panned out. So here we are back at the 4.22 test server balance change notes. Again, I'll put a link to this in the description down below, and I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions on if you agree with me about how the test actually went. So first things first, of course, the new ships. There are 47 of these. I obviously didn't get a chance to play with all of them. I mainly focused on the small ships, and I think I've taken a lot of feedback from various different people in Catskull, in Void, and in other alliances and corporations around New Eden as well, just to give a vague idea. Now, in regards to the smalls, the frigates and the destroyers, the explorers were pretty cool, and I do maintain that the explorers are just specialised ships designed with exploration in mind. I do not believe that they are required for exploration. In fact, I'm pretty certain they're not. NetEase have mentioned in the past that exploration and scanning is something that every ship in the game will be capable of doing to a certain extent. These are basically just the Tech 10 equivalents of the probe and the probe covert ops, etc, etc. Otherwise, yes, at Tech 5 you'll still be able to use the probe covert ops or the Heron covert ops and go out exploring with some very good skills and abilities on those particular ships. But anyway, those were pretty cool. I enjoyed flying the Probe Explorer. It's very small, it's a great little ship just for exploring and taking things around. It's a Probe Covert Ops 2, basically, which I'm kind of all for, just under a different name. The Manticore, Hound, Purifier and Nemesis 3, however, I was not impressed with these. It was nice to have that fourth high slot, so if you're going into sort of PvE, for example, it meant you can just put 4 small missile launchers on, but they still have the problem with the large missiles, in that large torpedoes have absolutely no damage application whatsoever. So yes, you had monstrous DPS, but you had no ability to actually apply these to the target. Again, I mentioned this in my Small Ships Big Problems video. Check that out if you're interested in knowing more about this. Then we come to our destroyers. The Cormorant 3, Thrasher 3, Coercer 3 and Catalyst 3 interdictors were pointless to me. They do almost nothing better than the standard interdictors do. And that's not to say that, oh, I think these ships need buffs. It's I think they don't need to exist. I would rather have the Covert Ops variants back how they were before, possibly with some buffs. I don't think we need 3 interdictors. I don't think we need a Thrasher interdictor, a Thrasher 2 interdictor, and a Thrasher 3 interdictor, when there is so little difference in any of those. These ships were underwhelming to begin with. They are just interdictors, and that's how they should be, but get rid of them at Tech 10. Fill that slot with something else. Now, the Tech 2 assaults, the Corax 2 assault, Talwar 2 assault, Dragoon 2 assault, and Algos 2 assault actually impressed me. Now, admittedly, my bar was very, very low for destroyers in the test server, but genuinely, I saw some people doing some really interesting things with the Dragoon 2 assault, for example. I had some fun with the Talwar 2 assault, obviously it's my favourite of those 4, and they felt like how destroyers should be. That said, I'm not convinced that they are good enough to fill a Tech 10 slot in their current state. I feel like the Talwar 2 assault was where it should have been in the Talwar assault at Tech 7. I'm not convinced that the 3 additional tech levels are worth the wait. I feel personally more like the Talwar 2 assault is what the Talwar assault should be, and the Talwar 2 assault should be even better. They were good, but they don't stand up at Tech 10 compared to other ships. That's my opinion. Then we come to the cruisers, the Caracal 2, Stabber 2, Omen 2, and Vexor 2. These were interesting, actually. They're not all that much better than, like, the Navy issue and the Snipers, but they're a bit more all-rounded, which I really liked, and I got some really nice reports from people enjoying the Caracal, the Stabber, and the Vexor. I didn't get much in the way of reports on the Omen. I got mixed bags from about 2 or 3 people. Some people said they really liked it, another guy said that he was really underwhelmed with the Omen 2, but the Vexor 2 I got a lot of positive feedback on, as I did with the Caracal. I'll have to sit down and have a chat with Vetamune about the Stabber 2 at some point. The Osprey, Scythe, Augur, and Execra 2, I have no idea if anyone flew those. On paper, they're just standard upgrades over their Tech 6, Tech 7 variants. Tech 7, it's the Tech 7 for the Scythe, etc. So, on paper, they're better, and it's a logistics ship, so I think that on paper is kind of all it needs. It's just a better logistics ship. So these are okay, I'm okay with those. The Blackbird 3 Covert Ops, Bellicose 3 Covert Ops, Arbitrator 3 Covert Ops, and Celestis 3 Covert Ops, I got a lot of positive feedback on these, and the Celestis especially, I got one guy send me a whole ton of different kill mails he had managed with his. Looks to be a pretty cool ship. I think the Covert Ops cruisers are very popular anyway, so having a Tech 3 variant of them is pretty cool. The only thing to mention here, though, as we finish cruisers, is that there are no Tech 10 cruisers there that are using the using railguns. There's no Thorax, there's no Moa, there's no railgun cruisers at all at Tech 10, which is a problem I do think needs addressing. Then as we go into battle cruisers, the Ferox, Cyclone, Prophecy, and Myrmidon 2 Command all seemed to be pretty good. Obviously, the command bursts seem to be pretty bugged on the test server, so we're not entirely certain how those are going to actually pan out in regards to how the skill bonuses work. If you looked on those ships, it just had +2 command burst strength, +3 burst strength, and it's like that doesn't tell us anything, and I don't know anyone who actually categorically sat down and went, okay, the +2 and the +3 are this and this. So there is still work to be done on those, and I hope that gets fixed in time for live. Then we have the Guardians. The Drake, Hurricane, Harbinger, and Brutix Guardian, again, I got a lot of positive feedback for. The Hurricane Guardian was the one, obviously, I got most on. I actually flew one myself for a short while, and very much enjoyed it. Very tanky battlecruiser. Didn't seem to have any glaring problems. It is what it is. It's a Guardian at battlecruiser size, which is pretty cool. The Naga 3, Tornado 3, Oracle 3, and Talos 3, the feedback I got on those was, again, it's pretty underwhelming. It's just, if you've gone from a Tornado to a Tornado 2, you know what you're getting when you go from a Tornado 2 to a Tornado 3. It's a more expensive ship that does a little bit more damage and has a tiny bit more tank, etc. They're underwhelming, and I'm just not sure we need these at tech level 10, but yeah, I'm not sure what else we'd put there instead, so, you know, leave it as it is, I guess. The Tempest 2, Typhoon 2, Scorpion 2, and Armageddon 2, again, pretty good feedback across the board for these, possibly a little underwhelming, felt good to fly, but nothing overly special. The Dominix 2, of course, has been a point of consternation, because the Dominix 2 is basically the Dominix 1 as it was before the nerf, with a couple of other changes to things like its tank. It is a massively underwhelming thing to go from a Tech 9 Dominix to a Tech 10 Dominix. I will say at this point, we'll cover this more, I think the Dominix nerfs are fine, and I think that there's been so much complaint about them, I don't think it's warranted, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But I do understand that what you had at Tech 9 is going down, and then the Tech 10 version isn't much better than what you originally had at Tech 9, so that does have a bit of a negative feeling. That said, though, that's kind of the nature of this tier system. I don't like the fact that Tech 10 is just flat out better than Tech 9. I genuinely think that the higher up the tech branches you go, the more specialised a ship should be. I think the best versions of the ships, the straightforward combat versions, should be around about Tech 7, Tech 8, depending on what type of ship it is. I think the Tech 10 variants should be things like the E-Wars, the Destroyers, the Covert Ops, the ones that do things a little bit different to the others that you might otherwise get, so like Guardians and that kind of thing, the commands. But again, that's my personal opinion. I do understand that the Dominix 2 to a lot of people is underwhelming, because it's basically what you had before what you currently have got nerfed, if that makes sense. The Venture 4, a lot of people are like, why on earth would I ever want a Venture at Tech 10? And I do think that there is definitely a conversation to be had about what role the Ventures fit into when you can fly strip miners. I think there is definitely that sort of mobility aspect to it, and I think that actually the Ventures should mine faster than they do. I think the strip miners should not be slowed down, but Ventures should be sped up to make them better at single targeting asteroids. I think that's the point of a Venture. If you want one particular mineral, the Venture should be better at getting that one particular mineral, whereas the strip miners are there just to empty a belt in, you know, minutes. But again, the whole fact that there's a Covetor and a Covetor 2 at Tech 10, it's underwhelming. Like, what's the point in a Covetor 2 and a Covetor at the same tech level? If you can fly both of them, what's the point in having both of them? That's how this tech works, and again, it's kind of like, look at how the Exuma, the Covetor, all this kind of thing work in EVE Online, and you'll see that some of them are tankier but slower to mine, some of them have bigger cargo holds but are slower to mine, some of them are a bit more fragile and a smaller cargo hold, but they mine very, very quickly, that kind of thing. You actually have a choice about how you do this thing, and obviously some of them are better if you want to go AFK, some of them are a bit more intensive, and that kind of thing. It would have been nice to see that kind of decision being here, whereas the Covetor 2 is literally the Covetor, but better and the same tech level. The removal, again, I've said it enough times, the Coercer, the Catalyst, the Cormorant, and the Thrasher Covert Ops being removed is the worst thing about this patch. It kills small turret ships. Like, if you are using small railguns, small cannons, or small lasers, the loss of those ships really ties you into just your interceptor, and that's horrific. Again, watch the Big Ship Small Ships Big Problem video. That covers it all there. The Ferox Guardian, the Prophecy Guardian, the Myrmidon Guardian, the Cyclone Guardian, I kind of get why those have gone, because we've got the other Battlecruiser Guardian variants, and the Maelstrom. Again, people are like, why is the Maelstrom gone? Because it was at Tech 10 with the Maelstrom Striker, and the Striker is categorically better. It's literally the conversation I've just had about the Covetor and the Covetor 2. There's no reason having the Maelstrom if you're going to have a Maelstrom Striker at the same level. Just get rid of the Maelstrom and make the Striker the Maelstrom. That's kind of what they've done. The freighters. The freighters, I don't think there's anything really positive or negative we can say about these. They take a lot to build, which is to be expected for a capital ship. They carry an awful lot of stuff, and it's great to see that it is just straight up cargo hold, not special hold. Because let's be fair, if the Providence was having a special hold that was for carrying structures, it becomes pretty much the most useless ship in the entire game, which is saying something when we've got a Thrasher 3 interdictor. But anyway, ultimately, I quite like the freighters, and I think a lot of people had a lot of positive feedback. I think there were some people who were like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have the ability to fit some kind of guns or defences onto freighters? And I say no. No, a freighter should not have slots. A freighter is not designed to have slots. And you can sit there and go, yeah, but I want my freighter to be able to shoot things. Don't go AFK with a freighter. Don't go into nullsec or lowsec without an escort in a freighter. That's what they're designed for. You are looking to try and cover up the weakness that freighters have as an inherent part of their design in order to allow you to do things with a freighter that you shouldn't be able to do. It's as simple as that. Command ships. I wish I could give you more information on these. They were bugged on the test server and I couldn't fly the command destroyers, which disappointed me no end. The fact that I couldn't fly my Dragoon command or my Talwar command, it made me sad. It made me sad. I was really looking forward to trying those out and I didn't get a chance to. Modules, the command burst modules seemed to be pretty interesting. A lot of people seem to be quite enjoying these. I'm looking forward to having these on live. I'm saving up currently a whole ton of skill points. All my daily login skill points are being saved up to go straight into skirmish command burst and shield command burst and level those up so I can start using those destroyers effectively. Obviously, once we see what the destroyers are actually going to look like, because having, shield command burst operation, or whatever the skill was called, gives you 3% burst and 2% burst, tells me nothing about what those actually do. Skills, obviously the freighter skills, there's nothing much to say here. These are just necessary additions that help build freighters. Manufacturing, same here. And then we come to the balance changes. So the all ships having shield armor and structure increased by 5% was pretty cool. I think no one really complained about that. Having bigger numbers is always a nice thing. Obviously it's a bit weird to have this and then have more DPS, but it does make you that little bit more survivable as far as PvE goes, and just looking at your numbers, it's nice to see bigger things, I guess. The tier 10 ships, again, it doesn't really matter. We weren't able to fly the Tech 10 ships before this, really, unless, like me, you had access to Fulmination. So ultimately, it's kind of neither here nor there. The shield armor structure, velocity, and signature radius increases don't mean a thing, because we've got nothing to compare them to. It's just what the ship was when we got it. The frigates here, having the Purifier, Manticore, Nemesis, and Hound 2, all getting the additional high slot, well, that's awesome, but without any application bonuses, like reducing the explosion velocity and increasing the explosion velocity, increasing the explosion velocity and reducing the explosion radius of large torpedoes, they're still useless ships, unless you're going up against structures. That's literally the only time that those are used. The Executioner, I stand by, these are ridiculous. They do not need the buffs. They're powerful enough without these buffs. They needed nerfing before getting these buffs. These buffs just make them freaking ridiculous. I almost said a very bad word that may have got me demonetized on YouTube there, but that's how strongly I feel about this. Having the Slasher 2 Interceptor be this good means it is better than the Drumiel. Yes, some of you've pointed out that actually the Drumiel does have a minor DPS increase. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, the DPS from the Drumiel is literally like 3% higher than the Slasher 2 Interceptor, and that is massively outweighed by the fact that the Slasher 2 Interceptor is smaller and faster, so it doesn't get hit, and it's immune to bubbles, and it gets those bonuses to tackle. The Drumiel is just flat out outclassed by this. And the same with all of the others. There's no reason to fly a Coercer when you have a Slasher 2 Interceptor. There's no reason to fly any other small laser ship, other than perhaps the Succubus if you particularly like its tankiness, or you want shield field module on a small ship. These genuinely are outclassing the faction frigates. The only reason to fly a faction frigate over an interceptor is if you want the specific bonuses, like if you want to be doing electronic warfare with the crew war, then go for that instead of the Executioner 2 Interceptor, but otherwise the Executioner 2 Interceptor does more damage, and it's more survivable than the crew war, so yeah, there's that. Destroyers, the increase to shield armor and structure, in addition to the general across the board, was nice. It made them that tiny bit tankier, and the flight velocity, I think, actually was good. I actually like that flight velocity. It put them on par with cruisers, not too slow anymore, which was nice, and the Thrasher, like the Thrasher fleet issue, which I did genuinely fly, just felt much better as a speed tank, which I think is a good thing. That's a nice positive start. But then it gets ridiculous. Interdictor destroyers, the high slots being reduced to 2 kills these interdictors. Like, there is now the only difference between a Thrasher interdictor, a Thrasher 2 interdictor, and a Thrasher 3 interdictor ultimately is how long the bubble lasts in space. So unless you care about, like, your bubbles, then there's literally no difference between those 3 ships, and quite frankly, you can just drop new bubbles anyway, because they don't use all that much fuel, so it's kind of like, there's no point. These ships have been reduced now, like literally, I will not, once my Thrasher 2 Interdictor gets destroyed, I'm not going to replace it, because all it is a bubble ship, and the Thrasher Interdictor does that job just fine as it is. The Tier 6 Sniper Destroyer, losing the mid-slot and gaining a low slot, felt okay. It kills them in PvP, but for PvE, they're kind of okay. In PvP, they now need to be part of a pack, which I guess is kind of the point. It's a long-range thing. You have a tackle that holds it in place, and then the sniper comes along and punches it. But sniper mode is still absolutely naff. Like, there is no... Sniper mode is freaking useless, and no one uses it. No one uses it. So, again, this doesn't really do much to the snipers. It ups their DPS a little bit, because, oh, congratulations, you can now put in an additional weapon upgrade module into the low slots, but that's literally all we got there for the snipers. We need to get that sniper mode fixed. The Tier 7 Assault Destroyers, however, excellent that the mid-slots went from 2 to 3. They needed that. Unfortunately, taking the low slots from 4 down to 3 utterly kills them again. They fix one problem and then create an entirely new one that still means the Tech 7 Assault Destroyers are absolutely worthless as far as it matters. They're not good ships. They are not good ships. Yes, you can do stuff with them. Frosty Jack's been going crazy, showing me all the kind of cool stuff he's been able to do in his Talwar Assault, etc. But this doesn't fix those problems. It's not suddenly able to do new stuff. In fact, it's actually less able to do some of the stuff it used to do. In PvE, it now utterly sucks. And in PvP, it has no tank anyway, and it still dies. The additional mid-slot there doesn't help you when you've got no capacitor to support it. It's not a good fix. Tier 7 assault destroyers are still absolutely terrible. The interdictor cruisers, I do think this is a good change. I think the interdictor cruisers being able to form a gate camp solo, yes, is a problem. But hang on, weren't you against that with the interdictor destroyers? Well, yes, because if you're in a frigate, chances are you're in an interceptor, which ignores the destroyer gate camp anyway. If you're in another destroyer, chances are you can take out the gate camp. If you're in anything bigger than a destroyer, you're going to be able to take out the gate camp anyway. Destroyer solo gate camps were not really a thing. People tried them, but it's not a good way of doing it. You're just going to catch the occasional sort of PI thief, that kind of thing. The cruiser interdictors, however, the fact that a Bellicose 2 interdictor or a Celestis 2 interdictor could do a solo gate camp was a problem. So reducing the high slots down to 2 or 3, I think, does genuinely help these ships out, and it pushes them into a point where they should be. So it doesn't help the ships out, but it helps the game out. Making those ships not able to do a solo gate camp, I think, is good. I think it's good that if I get caught by a Celestis interdictor again at a gate camp, I can actually fight back against it because it doesn't have infinite DPS to just tank me off the board in one hit. The tier 10 interceptor cruisers, the Malar interdictor, etc, 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 again, it's tech 10, so it's kind of, it's neither here nor there. It's what we didn't know any different. It's what it is. Now, when it comes to the battleships, I think the Typhoon getting an increase there helps. I don't think it's enough to properly fix it, but it's nice. It's a step in the right direction. I think definitely what I'd like to see here is that the Typhoon gets reduction again to torpedo explosion radius and an increase to torpedo explosion velocity. I would like to see the Typhoon pushed into using torpedoes, but right now, large torpedoes are useless. They cannot apply their damage to anything short of a Citadel. So the only time you're ever going to use them is taking on Citadels, at which point the Typhoon is kind of pointless. You may as well go for literally any of the Strikers, because that's what they're designed for. That's what Siege Mode is for, taking out Citadels. Now we come to the Dominics, and deep breath on this one, because I know I'm going to get a lot of angry comments in the comment section down below. The Dominics nerf is important. I think the Dominics nerf is fine. I think it's necessary. Yes, it's a 25% reduction to its skill bonuses, but when you actually math that out, it's about an 8% reduction to overall DPS, which quite frankly is not stopping anyone from doing anything. You are still going to be able to solo Tech 10 storyline encounters. Not only that, the Dominics is still able to do that from extreme ranges thanks to sentry drones, and if something does happen to get close to you, with a Dominics, you can swap those sentry drones out and bring in medium combat drones and take out whatever happens to be close to you, or heck, you can even go to small drones, because it gets bonuses to drones. Not to large drones, to drones. It gets bonuses to whatever size drone you want. No other ship can do that. If I'm in something like a Tempest using strike cannons and an interceptor gets close, I can't suddenly take off the strike cannons and put on auto cannons and try to shoot it. Ultimately, in fact, with the Dominics, it's like taking off those large strike cannons and putting on medium or even small auto cannons. You can apply your damage and change things to the situation at hand. No other battleship can do that, other than obviously the Rattlesnake, which is a faction battleship and expensive as all hell. So the Dominics has that versatility on its side that no other battleship has. It's also fairly tanky, and it has the capability to sit at extreme ranges, and thus has safety inherent in that. It can range tank very effectively, and if something happens to close that gap, it can then swap to a different type of drone capable of dealing with that particular threat. That makes the Dominics incredibly powerful. So yes, the fact that it was very low DPS and it's now lost even more DPS, 8%, woo, is not killing the Dominics. It's just making it slightly less capable of soloing Tech 10 storylines in short order. It means those anomalies take a little bit longer to kill, which, quite frankly, is a good thing, because Dominic's pilots, I'm not going to say like you're killing the game, you're not, it's not quite that extreme, but Dominic's pilots sitting in Tech 10 storyline encounters and clearing them at the speed that they are currently clearing them gives them one of the best ISK faucets in the game. That is ISK that is created out of nothing and added to the economy. The more ISK is in the economy, the more it gets devalued. That is literally how inflation works in the real world. So then Plex increases in cost. Ultimately, one of the biggest increases to Plex is caused by people capable of doing high-end content and some of the most lucrative ISK-generating activities in a solo capacity from relative safety. You don't lose a Dominic's frequently doing Tech 10 storyline encounters, you can do them quite comfortably. So once you've made up the money that you got for the Dominic's, you're just in straight up profit, and every encounter you do is straight up profit, and you're just generating more and more and more ISK into the economy, causing inflation. So reducing the speed that a Dominic's can clear these encounters helps us reduce inflation. Then the Maelstrom Striker, the buff I think is warranted. The Raven Striker, the nerf is warranted, because remember, this isn't technically a nerf. It's a 5% 5 down to 4% reduction, which is a very small overall, because it's the bonus, not the actual DPS. So again, when you math it out, it's a very small decrease. But the missiles themselves are still getting buffed in this patch. Same with the Apocalypse Striker, it loses some of that DPS, but it is getting buffed later in the patch. The Megathron Striker, 5 down to 4, but railguns get buffed later in the patch. It's still overall a buff, it's just a minor nerf in amongst that buff, so that the buff isn't quite so ridiculously large. The Hyperion, I got a lot of people enjoying the fact that they were flying a Hyperion. It seems to be a very popular ship, a lot of people looking forward to flying that. Same with the Rock, same with the Abaddon. I think those are all good changes there. The people I spoke to who had tried those really enjoyed it. The Badger, Sigil, Wreath and Nereus having a 50% more inventory capacity was widely accepted as a fantastic change. And then we come to the armor changes. So this is a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, armor definitely feels better now. Like, I'm actually armor tanking some ships that I would normally just shield tank, which is pretty cool. I do need to sit down with a Hurricane and see if this makes the Hurricane armor tank build actually worthwhile using. Same with things like the Cinnabal and the Dramiel. Yes, you can armor tank those. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm playing with it. Leave me alone, let me do my math. The downside of this, though, is the power grid and capacitor consumption. The capacitor consumption increase does kind of make it basically shield tanking, but on a different bar, and the power grid consumption, that has proven problematic. It actually means that some ships struggle to fit the armor repairers where they did before, especially at dead space level, because those are now very power grid hungry. So for me, I think possibly losing the power grid increase would do well, I think, for armor. I think armor's in a fairly good place. I need to spend more time with it to properly work out whether or not it's worth doing. But so far, the basic math and sort of the licking the air test, it's a good change. It's a step in the right direction. It's not there yet, but it's a step in the right direction. I think the explosion velocity reduction, well done to anyone who picked this up. That is a nerf, not a buff. I misread that as explosion radius. It's a nerf to large rapid missiles, which again I kind of think needed to happen. Simply because the large rapid missiles are, again, very, very powerful. When you look at something like the rocket set, the Raven, using those, it's a very, very dangerous battleship. Then you've got the increases to beam lasers and railguns, and it's not beam lasers, it's beam and pulse lasers, and it is rifled and snub-nosed railguns. So again, if you're flying a Daredevil or any, laser or railgun ships, you're getting more buffed to your DPS, which is pretty sweet for some of the small ships. Means your H1N2 Interceptor is actually going to be pretty powerful, you know? Obviously, any railgun cruisers that you have, you're not going to have any at Tech 10, so sad face there. But those nerfs we saw earlier to things like the Megathron, etc., those are outweighed here by the increase of 10% here across the board. So that's a nice change. And damage dealt by missiles, cannons, and decomposers increasing as well does help things out a little bit. We then come to that signature radius adjustment literally does nothing. We looked at this and it really does nothing. You're going from 500 to 5,000%. It's like someone just went, lol, let's just make this an insane number. It doesn't actually change anything. You weren't getting, no one was missing you before. Now they're just definitely not missing you. Armor Link modules are still broken. They work properly how they're supposed to, but that design just doesn't work. Armor Link is just not good. Shields, the shield field modules are still just categorically better than Armor Link. I'm not sure how we can fix that. I think it just needs a complete redesign at this point. Although when I say that, I am worried that they'll redesign it to basically be the shield field module, but just with armor instead, which is not what we need. I haven't figured out how I think that should work. Now the pirates here, the pirate changes are interesting. That increased tankiness certainly actually really does change things. It means that some of the higher level anomalies do take significantly longer to complete now because of how ridiculously tanky some of those ships are. I'm personally all for this change because, again, it means that high-level ISK generation is being reduced. It's not as good ISK per hour. You're still going to be capable of completing those anomalies, but you're not going to generate as much ISK per hour as you were before, which means less ISK being added to the economy, which means inflation is slowed down, and it helps with Plex as well. If you are an alpha player, this is a good change for you because it should help reduce the cost of Plex. That is a good thing. You can sit and scream at NetEase all you like and say, oh, this game is becoming more and more pay to win, but this is an active change to help alpha players be able to afford Plex. That is a good thing here. The fact that the Angel Cartel pirates are now dropping proper bounties as well is awesome, plus the fact that the Afterburners and Micro Warp Drives now are much easier to catch. That is a good change there. It means interceptors in those high-level storylines aren't quite as ridiculous as they were before, and of course everyone remembers, I think it's a Battleship in Sweet Poison that is just ridiculously fast and sits at 30 kilometers out of any form of web or scram range. Yeah, it's not quite as insane anymore, so this again is a good change there. It means it's just not as stupid as it should be, but you are still going to take longer to do those Tech 10 storylines, which I'm all for. I'm all for because that helps people with Plex. Otherwise though, it's not as terrible as I thought it was. Ultimately, this balance patch, it's weird, it's still unusual, it still doesn't fix a lot of the problems I'm personally looking for. Those problems are in destroyers, and I don't think that anyone can fix destroyers with a blanket wash like they've tried to do. I think every individual destroyer hull needs to be looked at and tweaked. And in NetEase, if you're watching this, I am happy to sit with you guys and figure out how to do that for every single destroyer in the game. But most importantly, please give us our covert ops destroyers back. Please give us more turret gunships at Tech 10. I really want a Thrasher covert ops. I would love to have a Thrasher fleet issue 2, a Thrasher 2 fleet issue, and I would love to have a Thrasher Guardian 2 as well. Things like that, but again, I'm going off into the topic of the small ships, big problems video. Do check that one out as well. This now should be the last that I ever talk about the 422 test server. Fingers crossed we get some notes soon for when this is actually going to go live and what changes they have implemented based on our feedback. I'm still hopeful for this. Obviously, we then have Exploration coming in June as well, so whereas this really destroyed my soul when it first landed, I'm actually back to being hopeful on this and looking forward to learning more. We'll see. We'll see. As Garrick once said in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, I like to be as hopeful. However, experience has taught me to hope for to plan for the worst. It's something like that. I can't remember the exact quote. I'll put it on screen now anyway. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching this one right the way to the end. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.